Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. All right, folks, this is a follow-up of a video that I did regarding Clarence Thomas and the Voting Rights Act. And I want to start this video with two hashtags. First hashtag is hashtag Save Section 2. And the second hashtag is hashtag Hands Off Section 2. So the first one is hashtag Save Section 2, and the second one is hashtag Hands Off Section 2. Now, I will explain later in this video what this is all about. But what I need you to do is to stay until the end of the video so you can learn what I'm talking about, because I need your help. Also, I want to dedicate this video to two civil rights icons who passed 5 years ago today, Representative John Lewis and Reverend C.T. Vivian, two lions, icons in our ability to vote. So we owe them a debt of gratitude because of all their hard work giving us the ability to let our voices be heard, to make our voices count. So thank you again to the late Representative John Lewis and the late Reverend C.T. Vivian. And isn't it ironic that Thomas is trying to weaken our vote? But this video is not just another Clarence Thomas hating video. In fact, I don't hate Clarence Thomas, nor anyone else. What this is a Clarence Thomas resistance video. Hey family, do you believe in the work we're doing? Does our content speak to you? Do you appreciate our in-depth legal analysis and political commentary from an African-American perspective? Do you believe it matters to our community? Then don't just watch from the sidelines. Please click that membership button and become a member of the 2% Club today. That's right, we need just 2% of our subscribers to become channel members. For just $4.99 a month, that's less than 20 cents a day, you'll help us keep creating powerful content that defends our democracy, demands justice, and develops a strong African-American community. But if you want more, at $9.99 a month, which is only 33 cents a day, you'll get access to exclusive members-only live streams, bonus content, and behind-the-scenes updates. And for just $14.99 a month, which is under 50 cents a day, our top-tier members get access to live Zoom calls, strategy sessions, and a direct voice in shaping this movement. We're not just building a YouTube channel. Folks, we're building a movement based on righteousness and justice, just what our community needs in a time of disinformation and division. So if you believe in what we're doing, click the membership button and join now. Become a member of the 2% Club today. Let's build something powerful together. Because we have something very urgent to resist. And that is Thomas's mission to destroy one of the most important protections Black Americans have ever had. And it's Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. If Thomas convinces his colleagues on the Supreme Court to strike it down, he will have effectively dismantled the remaining part of the Voting Rights Act itself. Now, I'm not going to do a deep dive into the Voting Rights Act in this video because I already did that in a recent video. I have the link to that video in the description below. But let me give you this warning again. If Clarence Thomas gets his way, black political power will be severely watered down. Section 2 is what prevents states from drawing voting maps that water down or weaken our political voice. All right? And states do that by cracking our communities apart or packing us into a single district. I touched on that in the previous video. And they do that even when our people, our community, make up a large percentage of the state's population. And Section 2 is the only legal protection we have to ensure that we get fair representation. Now, let me show you how this is playing out right now. So let's go back first to Alabama. Black people are nearly a third of Alabama's population, and for a long time, they had just one black majority congressional district. So they sued on the basis of Section 2, and they won. The court ordered a second district. So black voters now have real representation. They make up 1/3 of the population, and they control 1/3 of the congressional voting districts. But what did Clarence Thomas do with that Alabama case? He wrote a scathing dissent, one that probably made Alabama's white supremacists extremely proud. And then Louisiana, same demographics, same lawsuit, and the same outcome. Black voters won a second district. But white supremacists in Louisiana appealed to the Supreme Court, and Clarence Thomas is leading the charge to eliminate blacks' second congressional district. But not only that, he wants to go further. He wants the Supreme Court to strike down Section 2 altogether. I covered some of this in my most recent video. And I told you that this isn't just judicial activism, it is judicial warfare on black political power. And now, Trump's team, his administration, MAGA, they are targeting Texas. They're trying to redraw congressional districts in Texas here so that they can lock in Republican dominance, because the state is becoming more and more purple. And they're willing to do this and are fighting to do this, even if it means pushing out black congressional leaders like Representative Jasmine Crockett. If Section 2 fails to stop Texas, Texas could have new districts that are controlled by white conservatives on a permanent basis. And again, black representation could disappear altogether. And again, Clarence Thomas is front and center, spearheading the campaign for white conservatives. Let's be clear. Clarence Thomas didn't just wake up one day and decided to attack the Voting Rights Act. He has been working to undermine the Voting Rights Act for more than 30 years. And his record is undeniable. Now, what I want to do is I want to read you a part of a dissenting opinion that he wrote in a case from years ago, back in 1994. It's the Holder versus Hall case. All right? I want to read that to you, so stay with me. So here's what Thomas said in that case. Quote, I believe that a systematic reassessment of our interpretation of Section 2 is required in this case. I can no longer adhere to a reading of the act that does not comport with the terms of the statute and that has produced a disastrous misadventure in judicial policymaking. So he calls the court's Section 2 jurisprudence, the way they've interpreted Section 2 in the past, to use it to help blacks, he said that is a misadventure. All right? A disastrous misadventure at that. And then he goes on to say, if one surveys the history of the Voting Rights Act, 42 U.S.C. Section 1973, one can only be struck by the sea change that has occurred in the application and enforcement of the act since it was passed in 1965. So he's saying that the court is now using the Voting Rights Act in a way that it wasn't intended to be used. All right, so he goes on to say, the statute was originally perceived as a remedial provision directed specifically at eradicating discriminatory practices that restricted blacks' ability to register and vote in the segregated South. Now the act has grown into something entirely different. In construing the act to cover claims of vote dilution, we have converted the act into a device for regulating, rationing, and apportioning political power among racial and ethnic groups. So what he's saying is, initially, the act was used to stop literacy tests, poll taxes, and that sort of thing. But since then, the court is now using it against voter dilution cases. That is, again, where you have a percentage of blacks, but the voting districts represent a fraction of that percentage, which means that blacks' voting strength is weakened, is diluted. And Thomas is making the argument that the Voting Rights Act was never intended for that. And of course, he's wrong. So he goes on to say, in the process, we have read the act essentially as a grant of authority to federal judiciary to develop theories on basic principles of representative government, for it is only a resort to political theory that can enable a court to determine which electoral systems provide the fairest levels of representation or the most effective or undiluted votes to minorities. So he's saying the court has become somewhat of a representative type of body, like Congress or something, getting over into things that the courts should not be getting into, that federal courts shouldn't be getting into. Wrong again. An examination of the current state of our decisions should make obvious a simple fact that for far too long has gone unmentioned. Vote dilution cases have required the federal courts to make decisions based on highly political judgments that courts are inherently ill-equipped to make. A clear understanding of the destructive assumptions that have developed to guide vote dilution decisions and the role we have given the federal courts in redrawing the political landscape of the nation should make clear the pressing need for us to reassess our interpretation of the act. So he goes on to continue to say that the way SCOTUS has interpreted Section 2, it is taking federal courts into an area that they shouldn't be going into, and that is determining whether or not, a minority group has enough to have this many congressional voting districts or not. So, I mean, come on, Justice Thomas. You can't be for real here. I mean, you just cannot be for real. You know, sitting where you sit, that these cases are really, really, really important, these vote dilution cases. Because one, Section 4 and 5 protected, before they gutted it, protected our ability to vote. Section 2 type of dilution cases protect the strength of our vote. If there are, for example, 5 million blacks in a particular state and 4 million of them are packed into one congressional district, okay, and the rest of those that are left, the 1 million, are cracked up into white voting congressional districts, then you have weakened, you have diluted our vote. Whereas if you took, for example, half of those 5 million and put 2.5 and use that first 2.5 as one black majority district and the other 2.5 as a second black majority district, then our vote is more representative of our population share. And that's what he wants the court to get away from. All right? And he's not even being really honest about that, because in the Shelby County versus Holder case, that essentially invalidated Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act, he voted in favor of that too. So he doesn't see that the Voting Rights Act should protect blacks against schemes and laws and devices and strategies that prevent us from voting, nor from weakening our votes. All right, so he's being just disingenuous here. All right, and again, we got to call him out on it. We got to. And then there was the case of Brnovich versus the DNC, and Thomas was in the majority in that case as well, and it did weaken Section 2. Justice Alito wrote that opinion. I remember reading it from page to page, cover to cover, and it did grave damage to Section 2. So he has been anti-black for so long. I mean, he helped kill the affirmative action law. And besides this, he's the one who pushes color blindness. This whole color blindness thing, that they get from Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, when Dr. King said, I look for the day when my children are not being judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. They twisted that all around to say that Dr. King was making the argument in that speech that there's never a time when race ought to be taken in consideration. That is not true. When you are remedying racism, race should be taken into effect. So he's advocating for a color blindness that really helps white supremacy. But it doesn't stop there. Okay? Thomas has more baggage that really undermines his credibility. And that is the fact that it has come out that Thomas has gotten paid handsomely over the years. According to multiple investigations from ProPublica, Vanity Fair, U.S. Senate reports, and so on, Justice Thomas has accepted millions in luxury gifts from white conservative billionaires over about 2 decades, in the form of rides on private jets and yachts and resort vacations, even tuition for a relative. It's also reported that one of these white conservative billionaires paid off a family member's house, and a lot of it was not disclosed. One watchdog found Thomas accepted more gifts than every other Supreme Court justice combined, and doing so all while ruling against civil rights laws that protect Black Americans. All right? So, just had to throw that out. Now, here's what we must do to save Section 2. You hear that bar? Here's what we must do to save Section 2. And here's another one. Clarence Thomas, we're talking to you. Hands off Section 2. Clarence Thomas, this is for you. Hands off Section 2. And here's what we must do to save Section 2. All right, step 1. We got to spread the word. We got to spread the word. And we spread it by using the types of slogans that I just shared with you. Again, Clarence Thomas, this is for you. Or Clarence Thomas, this is to you. Hands off Section 2. And then those hashtags that I gave you in the beginning of the video, I gave them to you early because I know some folks ain't got the discipline to stay and listen to a video, so I put them up front. But here are those hashtags again. Hashtag save Section 2. And you can spell that with the number 2 or TWO. Hashtag save Section 2. And hashtag hands off Section 2. All right, so hashtag save Section 2 and hashtag hands off Section 2. And what I want you to do is tag your friends, tag your coworkers, tag your family, tag your church family, tag your your fraternity brothers, tag your fraternity sorority sisters, pardon me, tag everybody you know with those hashtags, and especially tag influencers. All right, let's make this go big. Let's make it go viral. Let's make it trend. All right, so that's step one. We got to build awareness. We got to let Clarence Thomas know that we got our eyes on him. And our message to him is hands off, Section 2. All right? All right, second thing we need to do is, as always, contact Congress. Contact Congress. Let them know to save Section 2. Now, Congress doesn't have any direct power over SCOTUS. They're both co-equal branches of the government. But those GOP, Republican, Congress, MAGA people, they all know each other. They know Clarence Thomas. And they know that if we put enough pressure on them, that they can get the message to Thomas, don't do that to Section 2, otherwise I'm going to get voted out. And that's the message that we want to send. We will vote you out if Thomas guts Section 2. So call them and tell them to save Section 2, hands off Section 2. Third of all, I need you to support the organizations that are out here doing the work. All right? For example, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund has filed these suits in the past. They're the ones who are actually in the courtroom. And some people say, what are black lawyers doing? They're fighting like crazy against this Trump regime. But they need help. The NAACP need our financial help. So go to their website. Show them that you appreciate the work that they're doing. NAACP Legal Defense Fund. That's different than the NAACP itself. This is the NAACP Legal Defense Fund that does the court work. So while you're at it, donate to both. And then there's the ACLU. I don't agree with everything that they do in their litigation, but they do fight a whole lot of the civil rights battles in court. So throw them something as well. And don't forget our own organization, the Lazarus Law and Justice Project, LLJP. All right, support us as well. So donate to those organizations, volunteer if you can, share them, help with this fight. Help us protect Section 2. It's a fight for the very foundation of black political power. And Clarence Thomas is trying to take us back. And so we got to tell him and show him we're not going back. We're not going back. We're going to resist. We're going to mobilize. We're going to rise. And we're going to save Section 2. We're going to save Section 2. So Clarence Thomas, this is to you. Hands off Section 2. And to you all, let's work together to save Section 2. Hashtag save Section 2. I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video from start to finish. And as always, remember, stay woke.